Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Whispering Gentleman. So flick off the lights, sit down in your comfortable chair, and grab a glass of your favorite drink as we dive on into it. How to Become Perfect by Corpse Child. Let me ask you something. Do you feel like a failure? Do you feel like you're nothing but a walking sack of flaws held by a sack of meat? Do you wish you could change it? If so, how would you do it? Would you try changing your dietary habits? Eat less junk food, eat more veggies, etc. Maybe try exercising more, hitting the gym 3 times a week, right? Maybe you'll finally ask out that super hot coworker that has your tongue tied every time you try to talk to her. Oh, I know. You'll try turning to faith to seek out some higher form of encouragement, won't you? Let me guess, you've tried most, if not all, of the aforementioned methods, haven't you? You've done what the hippies and the shrinks have spouted at you, and you still feel like you have no place in this godforsaken world, right? I bet you'd sell your soul just to feel like you mean something in this life, wouldn't you? I bet you wish you could be perfect. What if you could be? Now, before you accuse me of blowing smoke, hear me out. Yes, there is a way for you and I, human beings, to be perfect. Just imagine it for a second. You could live for the rest of your life without flaws? No, you'd be unable to create flaws. You'd never make any mistakes. You'd never hurt anybody. You'd always be able to finish what you start. And best of all, you'll never fail at anything again. Sounds great, right? I'll bet it sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? I can practically hear your next words coming a mile away. How the hell am I supposed to make myself perfect? Well, if you're really that desperate to know, I can tell you how. Don't ask me right now how I know about what I'm about to tell you. I'll get to that later. In all honesty, it's something I, myself, am still trying to comprehend. For now, if you're still serious about this, here's how to begin. A quick history lesson on this is that the game or ritual itself, it is called the Ritual of the Damned Lamb. It was apparently used by various lesser-known, unnamed, and underground religious societies and or cults in older times, usually as a way of ascension or for seeking some divine forgiveness for trespassing in some way to the faith. Only very, very, very few individuals today from those faiths are still around and would still use this practice today. I say all of this to say that there's essentially a prerequisite for attempting this. You have to believe in something. It doesn't have to be Christianity, obviously, given that the religions that practice this weren't exactly the most would consider to be Christians themselves. You could be Christian, Catholic, Buddhist, Muslim, Wiccan, or even some made-up religion belief like Heaven's Gate. Just as long as you believe in the existence of some high power, you're set to begin this practice. Here's what you'll need: sticks or twigs, an empty room, or at least a length or width of 6 to 8 feet of open floor space, a blade or sharp object enough to draw blood, a blindfold of some sort. To begin, take the sticks or twigs you've gathered and place them in your empty space, forming them into the shape of whatever symbol or talisman represents your personal faith or beliefs. You'll need to make the symbol large enough to lie down on top of, so the sticks will vary according to the shape and size of the symbol. Next, remove all clothing, and using your sharp object, pierce the palm of your hands and smear the blood at the points where your hands, head, and feet would be. Lie down in the shape of your symbol and put on your blindfold. Make sure your blindfold is on tight, painfully tight if you need it to. You should be able to see nothing but complete darkness throughout for this to work. Lastly, take your sharp object and carve an X into the center of your chest and whisper, "In the names of those those that stand beyond our veil. I offer unto thee my blood, my flesh, and my mind for sale. Take it, for I am thy damned lamb, and grant me perfection, that I may never again fail. Now, lay calmly and still inside your symbol. Eventually, you'll start feeling a stinging sensation, like you're being poked with a bunch of hot needles or shards of glass in your chest. Keep calm and lie still. Trust me, movement will only make it hurt worse. You should start hearing multiple faint whispers circling simultaneously around in your mind. They'll each be in a different language and different tones. Some will just whisper like it's trying to tell you a secret. Others will scream to you like they're in pain. Again, stay calm and try to listen to each word being said. You should start to hear the words form together to create a jumbled, distorted mess of words, yet you'll somehow be able to comprehend it in your own language. What exactly is said may vary, but essentially, it should be something to the effect of, I have come, my child. What doth thou seek? To this you must answer one word: perfection. Now, you should start to feel the stabbing sensation in your hands and feet as well. Again, stay calm and still. The voice will ask you your name, your age, sex, date of birth, and finally, what you believe in. Answer these questions clearly and honestly. It will know if you're lying, and it will make this whole thing that much more painful for you. Now, here's where your endurance is tested. The voice will then proceed to describe moments of your life where you exhibited some imperfection or flaw. It will be described in great detail to you, essentially forcing you to relive the moment yourself. At first, it will be something small, minute, something you would normally pass off, like the little white lies you used to tell your mom and dad to try and get out of trouble. Or maybe even the time you got away with sneaking off with that $1 candy bar. Over time, however, it will start to detail more and more personal flaws or embarrassments in your life. The ones you've tried to keep secret, as well as even the ones you've managed to repress. It will then ask you to either confess or deny what was said. Whatever it is, like before, answer truthfully. For each confession, the pain in your hands, feet, and chest will gradually become worse, eventually becoming almost unbearable. Remain calm and still, and continue to answer honestly. Eventually, the described moments will have caught up to the present, and it will then ask you if you wish to be made perfect. Should you answer no, I can't say what would happen. Now, here's where I answer your question from before about how I know all of this. It was about a year ago to the day now that I performed this ritual. I was looking at my final days on death row, the needle waiting for me. I won't go into detail on what all I've done, or should I say, what all didn't I do to land me here. Suffice to say, I was a very bad man who's destroyed in many different ways the lives of good people. And I'll be the first to tell you that I deserved every bit of what was waiting for me. That was the day I was to be visited by a priest for last confessions. At that point, I had already long been past the state of mind or heart to care about clearing my conscience. I had already confessed to everything in the courtroom. What good was it going to do me to repeat myself to some random pious moron now? The way I saw it, my place in hell was booked and reserved, and nothing was going to change that. By that point, I had already long been past the state of mind to care about clearing my conscience. I had already confessed everything in the courtroom, and what good was it going to do me to repeat myself to some random pious moron now? The way I saw it, my place in hell was booked and reserved, and nothing was going to change that. I remember when he first walked up to my cell. He was a middle-aged man wearing a black trench coat and a hat like he was the exorcist or something. and his face was pale and gaunt. To tell the truth, I almost thought I'd finally lost my mind and I was now seeing ghosts or something when I saw him for the first time. For a while, he just stared at me with the coldest, deadest eyes I'd ever seen outside of a Vietnam vet. Well, I said, annoyed, either spout your scriptures or shove off. I've already confessed everything, and I'm screwed no matter what I say or do now, so unless the miracle you're about to run your mouth about is that you're holding a pardon from the governor, please spare me. He just continued staring daggers at me, and I was tempted to do something to cause a disruption to make him leave. I'm here, he said in a cracked yet baritone voice, to offer you salvation, Mr. Keller. I looked at him again like he was insane before chuckling dryly. Despite this, he just kept staring at me. Are you serious? I asked in disbelief. Salvation? What? Do you think you're gonna get me to give my heart to Jesus or some shit like that? Look, I've stopped buying into all that crap long ago. Trust me. There's no saving my soul. He stood motionless and silent. I could see from the look on his face that, in his mind at least, he wasn't kidding about whatever he was talking about. That said, what the hell was that supposed to mean, offering me salvation? He took a deep breath and spoke again. Perhaps I should rephrase. I'm here, Mr. Keller, to offer you the opportunity for perfection. Now I really was confused. Huh? What are you talking about now? A chance at perfection? What's that supposed to mean? He was silent again. Well, I urged, quickly, feeling the patience leave me. Exactly what I said, Mr. Keller. I'm here to offer you a chance at becoming perfect. No more pain, no more flaws, none of this wickedness in your heart. You would never do any wrong again. I was at a loss for words. Normally by this point, I'd either stopped listening and ignored him until they went away, or I would have told them where they could cram it and made them leave. By this time, though, something was different. For one thing, he said all of this with the most dire conviction. In most cases, I can tell when they're just trying to spout their usual jabber out at me about the gospel. This wasn't that, though. After all, he clarified that he was offering me perfection instead of the Lord's mercy or anything like that. Despite this, it still didn't completely convince me that this was legit. What does he mean by becoming perfect? What are you? Allow me to enter, and I can show you what I'm talking about. Now I was convinced that this guy had popped a few screws loose. Right. Let you in my cell. Like they'd even allow that. You're funny, pal. He sighed and looked down before saying he'd be back again tomorrow. Use the time you have left wisely, Mr. Keller, was the last thing he said to me before turning and leaving the block, sauntering down the hallway like some supervillain in a movie. That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning, wondering who in the name of God was this crackpot, and what was he going on about. Sure enough, like clockwork, come 10 a.m. the next morning, there he was, approaching my cell in that same menacing fashion he did the previous day with a duffel bag. I was caught off guard, however, when I saw two of the guards then unlock and open the cell door, letting him in. Before I could ask if the guards themselves had lost their damn minds, he held up his hand, silencing me, and said, "Just listen to me." Without any real way to argue or protest, I scoffed and gestured him. He then went on to tell me about the ritual of the damned lamb and how to perform it, and the different groups that performed it for divination and all that, as I said earlier. While he railed on, he started pulling out the aforementioned materials out of his bag, the sticks, the blade, and the blindfold. I was instantly in shock seeing the knife. How in the hell did he manage to get that past the front, I wondered. Probably the same way he managed to convince them to even let him into my cell at all. In any case, he then asked me if I was ready to perform the ritual, to become perfect. To quote his words, now I was the silent one. Has anyone ever even accomplished this? I can't say for certain. Only they themselves would know. And where exactly are they now? I was not feeling good about any of this. He looked away from the supplies to me, fixing me in that cold, demented glare again. Again, Mr. Keller, I cannot say for certain. Those that embark on this trial do so alone. If it will answer your question, I will say that those I knew to have performed this ritual, I've not seen since. That was it. I couldn't take this ominously vague crap anymore, and it felt like this ritual, or whatever it was not a good idea. Okay, look, I'm not interested in whatever the hell this is, and my patience is just about gone, so I'll ask you one more time to piss off and leave me alone. Like the last time, he just lowered his head and silently got up and left. I was alone again in my cell, 2 days away from execution. Funny enough, it actually took me a minute to realize that the man had left his stuff behind in my cell. Looking back, I'm certain he did this on purpose. I spent hours just looking at the materials, thinking about everything the man said about the ritual. He had to have been nuts, I thought. How would I become perfect? I still wasn't sure what he even meant by when he said perfect. Perfect. How? And how exactly would this make me become perfect? Not to mention the idea that none who've attempted this have ever been seen again. Another part of me, however, couldn't help but look at the stuff he left behind, wondering what perfection would be like. No pain, no flaws, none of the wickedness in your heart. I can't lie here. I know I said what I was beyond hoping for anything other than to burn for the things I had done, which was true. That being said, that doesn't preclude me from the weight of my conscience. That's right. Even a fiend like me has a bit of heart after all. Imagine that. I mean, yeah, it all sounded like a load of crap. And it didn't sound like it would turn out good for anyone who did it. As far as I knew, it wasn't even possible to actually complete this ritual. And even if I did, what would even happen? Then again, what would I really be losing here if I did it? It was with this in mind that I then began setting up everything for the ritual. Though I wasn't any devout Christian or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination, I did believe there was a God out there. A God that would damn me as soon as he saw me. Anyway, I had set up the sticks in the form of the cross and tied the blindfold around my head before carving the X in my chest and then reciting the incantation. In the names of those that stand beyond our veil, I offer unto thee my blood, my flesh, and my mind for sale. Take it, for I am thy damned lamb, and grant me perfection, that I may never again fail. For about 5 minutes, nothing was happening. I started wondering what might happen when one of the guards walks by and sees all this. Then again, how had they not already? I guess that old goat went and managed to pay them off for that too. Soon enough, I did start to hear the whispers I mentioned before. Something else I should mention about this is how real they will sound. What I mean by this is that they won't sound like some ghostly wail like you're probably thinking. No. These will sound like the voices of normal people, clear and defined, and they sound like they're nearby. It was all so soft at first, and I thought it may have been a couple of the guards whispering outside my cell. Then, though they got louder and louder, and I noticed how they were all in different languages. One was in Spanish, Another, I think, was in German, and so on and so forth. Full of them. I'm not even sure if they were in any actual known language. More like some Eric tongues or something like that. Finally, they mixed together to form the words in English. I have come, my child. What doth thou seek? The voice was commanding and hypnotic in a way, despite it almost sounding half dead. My tongue was frozen for a moment before remembering what I had to say, stammering out, perfection. Immediately, I cried out and ceased in pain when I felt the stabbing in my hands and feet. The movements caused the pain to amplify. Once I was able to force myself to lie still, I heard the voice ask me my name, age, birthday, sex, and my beliefs. I struggled to answer, feeling the constant pain and fighting the urges to seize up again. My name is Jeremiah Keller. I'm 35, but born April 6th, 1984. Male. The pain increased dramatically, feeling now like my hands and my feet had been set on fire. And I heard a voice thunder in my head, asking me again what I believed in. At a moment's consideration and increasing pain, I finally blurted out, Christian. Baptist. Slowly, the burning subsided, and it went back to just feeling like my hands and feet were being stabbed. The voice then began to describe the time when I was 5 and I used to terrorize my neighbor's cat by nailing it with my Red Ryder. It also described how I would lie when questioned about it to get off scot-free. Finally, it asked me whether I would admit my guilt or deny. I remembered what the man was telling me about being honest and confessing to my imperfections when he told me about this, and I had a feeling that lying would make the extra pain from before return. Yes, I confess. I let out a sharp yelp when the pain started erupting in the center of my chest as well as the rest. At first I thought I was suffering from a heart attack, which made me seize again, in turn causing the pain to increase again. Next, the voice started telling me about the time when I was 8 and I used the pocket knife I got for my birthday to shave my little sister's head in her sleep. This caused her to have to be rushed to the ER after I dug too deep and embedded part of it in her head. She survived, but now lives with major mental disabilities, chronic narcolepsy, severe amnesia, and even has trouble trying to talk because of it. When it asked me to confess or deny this time, I was a lot more hesitant to answer. That was one of the many horrible things that I'd done, and I honestly had a damn near forgotten completely about it until that moment, reliving it like I was attempted to deny anything to get rid of the guilt again. Deny? Big mistake. Before I could even finish saying that, I felt the burning in my chest and limbs again, much worse this time. Of course, the extreme pain would cause me to seize again, and yes, this made it worse again. All right, I confess. I did it. I fucking did it. God, I'm sorry. Like before, my confession caused the burning to go away immediately. It was another minute before I could relax my body again, and the voice began another scene from my life. I don't know exactly how long it went on like this, the voice forcing me to confess the wrong, the imperfect parts of my life, while I struggled both from the physical and emotional pain to answer the way I was supposed to. I know that, like I've said, it gradually started describing to me the more and more horrific things I'd done over the years up to the present. The animals I used to torture just because. The children I used to kidnap and hold for ransom. Some of which wouldn't live after I was through with them, because Mommy and Daddy wouldn't pony up. The women I brutally tortured and raped until they could barely even breathe. All of it replayed by the voice in their gruesome detail. And of course, each confession caused the stabbing sensations to hurt worse and worse. Part of me wondered if this was what they meant in churches when they talked about divine judgment. In any case, I was indeed being judged here. What would result from it at that point was anybody's guess. Finally, I had confessed to my last imperfection, the murder of a man and his pregnant wife, the one that finally landed me here. My body was in so much pain by now that I found myself wishing I'd just chosen the needle. It then asked me if I wished to become perfect. I was almost too scared to answer. What would happen to me if I said no? Would the burning pains come back? Maybe it would be something that felt even worse. Then again, maybe nothing would happen. Maybe it'll just let me go, and I'd go back to where I was before I started all this. I figured though, I managed to make it here. What's the point in backing out now anyway? Whatever happens, one way or another, I'm a goner. With this, I answered yes. What happened next is difficult to describe in a way that makes sense to you while being accurate. All at once, I felt a giant gust of frigid air blast in front of my face, and then I felt nothing. Now, when I say I felt nothing, that's exactly what I mean. Nothing. Physically, mentally, or even emotionally. Nothing. It was as if someone had hollowed me out like a watermelon, leaving just an empty shell. Because of this, I thought I was dead at first. I realized otherwise, however, when I could hear the sounds from all around me. They were voices, not like the ones I heard before, but actual people. I could hear all of them around me, chatting, laughing, even whispering. It was all just mundane stuff. Who's seen who's running late, husbands telling their families, I love you, before heading out and stuff like that. But I heard it, and I understood it all. And that wasn't all. I could hear the sounds of every single insect or animal scurrying or tittering by, all of it in painfully crystal clarity. Slowly, I removed the blindfold from my eyes to see that I wasn't in my cell anymore. I was now in a large field of bright green grass. Looking around, I found I could see everything as well. Every blade of grass was clear and defined to me in detail. I saw clouds gathering overhead, and they were defined too, as was the tiny, crystalline clear droplets of water that fell from them. I know what you're thinking now, that I'm just on drugs or something, describing my latest trip, but no, this wasn't that. Trust me, I would know the difference between a trip and a reality. This was reality. I wasn't sure how, but it was. It was all real. I could now hear everything, see everything, understand everything, and yet I felt nothing. Empty. Looked at my hands and my body to see that my skin was now a pure ivory. I was naked and muscular, looking like a Greek god. I looked down to see a flower at my feet that was wilting. Stooping down, I touched it, and it immediately began to bloom into the most beautiful, radiant flower I'd ever seen. I had the power to give life. I had the power to create, and yet still, I felt nothing. Empty. I walked around the grassy plains and saw the grass and the flowers grow vibrant with life under my feet. Eventually, I found a deer who had been wounded, presumably by hunters. Like with a flower, one light tap of my finger, and its vitality was restored, darting off into the woods with more energy than ever. I could heal the sick, even raise the dead, yet I could feel absolutely nothing. Empty. I could now do nothing but good for the world. I was now essentially a god, No, not a god. I was God. I could create, never destroy. I could heal, never harm. I could bring happiness, never despair. I could do all of this, yet I could feel nothing. I was empty. No, not empty. Perfect. That's what I realized. Exactly what I'd lost when I completed the ritual. I was now God on earth, but bound as a slave to perfection. I couldn't feel anymore. All the joy and happiness I now bring to others, and yet I have none of my own. And now, I never will again. I couldn't admire the things I could do now. I couldn't be proud of my new ways because I couldn't feel pride. I couldn't cry for joy when I'd see the hurt be healed by me because I couldn't feel joy or tears. I couldn't be angry or hurt when I saw something or someone suffering because I couldn't feel anger or pain anymore. Happiness, sadness, joy, sorrow, pride, humility, everything, all gone. I wouldn't feel anything ever again. Empty. Perfect. As I said before, I've lived like this for 2 years now, devoid of any soul or humanity. I was evil man set to die in 2 days, and now I'm something else entirely. Something more, and at the same time less. I will continue to live like this, a slave to perfection itself, until the end of time. For I myself cannot die, only live. Now what I told you, all of this, let me ask you, would you wish to become perfect? If you enjoyed this story, check out more stories by Corpse Child on Reddit. As always, sleep tight and stay terrified.